Hello and welcome to the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. A not so busy week this week in the world of news. It's been pretty quiet, and I suspect that's down to one thing, and that would be the election. But we will no doubt talk about that today, and I suspect will be a little bit more to talk about next week. There's a few stories bubbling around under the surface that perhaps we can't quite push yet, but we will in the very near future. But here to chat with us today is my usual co-host from the West, Mr. McDonald. How are you?
Pretty good, all things considered. Still alive, which for me is always a good thing to say every week on. Last Friday, I recorded on a Friday morning show. Turns out we did quite well with that because I was stuck on the one plane that made it into Queenstown Airport before they had the bomb threat. I don't know if you heard about that. And we spent 2 hours stuck on the eastern end of the runway in a plane going nowhere where they figured out what to do. So I'm kind of lucky that I actually made it down and back all at the same time. And we recorded our show early.
Yes. I was sitting there looking for travel options for Graham. I helped Graham out with a few of his travel things once in a while, and I was frantically searching to see if there's a way we could get him out around the crowds, but you seem to make it anyway, so...
You're an excellent concierge, Richard, I can say that. Didn't need your services in the end, but you're an excellent concierge. I can recommend his services, folks. Give Richard a call. If the car industry goes to crap, he's your travel guy.
I'm not sure travel agents is really a growing business that I really want to get there too far into. I'd rather just make enough money to do a bit more of my own travel, but yeah. Anyway. And you just literally had to drive across Auckland in a rush with the road, how the road's out there this morning.
Coming back across the northern link, and I saw this big line of traffic as we're heading in the other direction to pick a car up, and I'm thinking, oh no, mother of... But it actually cleared itself. And it's always the way. If you're in the dealership industry, you know what happens on a Friday. A customer rings up and says, that car that I had scheduled for 3 o'clock this afternoon, actually, you know what? I'm coming in for it now, like 5 minutes ago. Is it okay? And all the klaxon alarms go whoop, 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 and everyone's running around. We had the car across on the shore getting some detailing work done. So it's cleared all the stops, and here we are, flying mile.
Well, all right. Now, coming in from the south, again, because David Crawford is still on the road, but he certainly, I think, impressed a few people last week, we have Amos Bambury from Better Finance. Amos, thanks for joining us again.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Awesome. You enjoyed last week, I hope?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah. I feel like Liam Lawson getting invited back again, This is same thing. It's good.
Well, so if there's any F1 nerds out there, you've got to watch the F1 news at the moment, because there's all sorts of scuttlebutt going around at the moment that... in a totally off-dealer topic news, but I'm sure there's some F1 nerds there who'll be listening. Mm-hmm. So what's the rumour now? Sergio Perez is going to announce the retirement at the Mexican Grand Prix. Ricciardo will get his seat, and Lawson will get Ricciardo's seat. So he's hoping. Oof. Graham's just glazed over right now.
Well, I'm from the Formula One era where it was like, I used to love Nigel Mansell, moaning Mansell, because it was like real men with hairy chests and moustaches all just, racing to get to the pub at the end. It was just fantastic stuff. And then all got a bit, same. But I've got to admit, Liam Lawson, in fact, come on, the Kiwi Motorsport 2023, how good are we? And it's fresh on the bat of SVG knocking the daylights out of the Americans in... was it Chicago or Detroit, and all the good news that came along with that. And here we had Lawson, another Kiwi talent at the top of the game. It's just fantastic stuff. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys sponsor any motorsport, Amos? You guys get a bit involved in that, or do you do any yourself?
No, I watch a lot though. I watch all of that, and especially I think just like what Graham said with the Kiwis and the Indy cars, like obviously Marcus Armstrong, Rookie of the Year, it's unreal. Like everyone's performing. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Now I said we'd touch on it, and we'll probably might spend a little bit of time on it actually. The election. Now I don't want to know how you guys have voted, but. Have you voted yet?
Yeah. I think on Wednesday and did it.
Yeah, I'm going to go tomorrow with my kids.
Love the thrill.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't done it yet. I'll probably do it today, but I am going to take my daughter with me. I want her to kind of see this as a thing. I seems silly, but I think politics is quite important in the longer term, and I think it'll be a bit of fun for her to go down. And I don't know if they're giving out the voting stickers again this year, though. I heard that you don't get the sticker anymore when you go to vote, which is kind of sad. I guess it's waste we shouldn't need to do. Now,
didn't do those in West Auckland. But no, you're absolutely right, guys. In fact, my son, this is the first year I haven't been to an election party, because obviously used to be pretty heavily involved in one of the major political parties. I don't know which one. And I used to go to the E-night party, and then we'd go into town with the big main party that used to have its guys. So this is the first year I haven't gone to anything. I've been invited, but I'm not going. In fact, I'm not even going to watch the E-night special. I'm going to a friend's 21st party. But my son, bless his politically motivated socks, he wants to stay home and watch it from start to finish at the age of just turned 17. So I mean, that's awesome. I think the more people that do that sort of stuff at his age, irrespective of which way they're going to vote, that's not important. It's just important to get a sense of the scale of it. I think actually the scale and what it actually means, the importance of it going forward, because I think that gets really lost. Is just how critical elections can be, depending on your point of view and what you want and what you wish for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to do the whole election night watching thing and have a bottle of rum there and take a shot every time they call a seat or whatever it is, Yeah. See how many times they talk about Winston being the kingmaker. That kingmaker could be the good drinking word. You got to have a drinking word for an election night coverage.
If that's it, you'll be drunk by 7.
Now, did anyone watch the leaders' debate last night? We had no mention of clean car in this one. The first one we had clean car mentioned multiple times. No mention of clean car at all last night. In fact, they didn't seem to get through much last night.
Did not watch. Haven't watched any of them.
Boring.
Deliberately. Everyone in Wellington that watches this show, and I believe there's quite a few, are sitting there going, right, how could you? This is where our future's at stake. Because we're just over it, people. We're over it. We were over it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we're definitely over it now. The
argument is maybe people aren't that over it, because still 2 million people haven't voted. Obviously, to most people out there, the clean car discount and clean car standard aren't necessarily big things on the horizon to worry about. For the industry, they are. I think with the amount of seats still out there hanging that we may need, National may need, New Zealand First and ACT to get over the line, I think the clean car standard is now looking a little more shaky potentially, because they're going to need some bargaining chips, and I suspect that could be one of them. But hopefully we'll have some form of answer early next week or by this time next week as to who the next government's going to be and whether clean car is going forward or not. But I don't think we can guarantee we can at the moment.
Well, I don't know. If our audience includes Winston and David, if you're watching this show, I'm sure you are, of course, because this is the most important thing in Wellington you should be watching. Don't muck around, guys. We need the answer in like 7 days. Like, this is business, okay? Get it in, get it done. 7 days out. We don't need another 8 weeks of hanging around waiting, and that's probably what the industry needs the least right now. Because we've had this long latent period building up to the election. And Amos, you've been talking about it as well. It's fatigue out there amongst people when it comes to their spending and also uncertainty. And what we all were hoping for was at least some sort of trigger point. It didn't really matter which way the result went as long as you had a result, and people could then start to make plans going forward in their minds about certainty about their jobs or career or future. Without that, we're in limbo till the new year, and that's going to be really, really tough.
I don't think we're going to get any massively clear answers. I think there's a strong chance we won't get any massively clear answers. Things are trending in a direction which suggests that we've gone from National having a very, very clear mandate early, a few weeks ago, according to the polls, to not maybe quite anymore. Still small chance of it not being them, but yeah, we'll see. Anyway, let's move on to the news for this week. And as I said, it's a bit of a quiet week, but there'll be a lot to come next week. So first up, and this is actually, I'm running this one here, but there's a few stories around this that we'll discuss. And that's Turners. They are really hitting their performance benchmarks lately, it seems. So we've had a couple of advisor stories out lately. One suggesting that the company is about to hit 10% of the vehicle retail market, which is a massive volume of vehicles. And then this one here, which is again from another analyst suggesting that the company is going to hit the NZX 50, so be in the kind of top benchmark 50 listed companies in the country in the very near future. So they're saying December 2023. And that comes from NZX Limited, Jarden and Forsyth Barr. So some fairly solid companies there. The S&P NZX 50 index is the main stock market index in New Zealand. It comprises the 50 biggest stocks by free float market capitalisation trading on the New Zealand stock market. The company continues to go from strength to strength. They say it's not just the Tina effect. They say the business is thriving and that their business initiatives such as digital optimization, new sites, and employee customer experience are all literally paying dividends. The share price momentum has been strong, up 31% from a 52-week low, including a market-leading 6% rise on October 11, which doesn't do any harm going into the final stretch for index consideration. All this despite the OCR hikes providing a real handbrake, pun intended, on earnings. And they're kind of doing this at a time when, the market hasn't been fantastic. It's not been terrible for used cars. But, Graham, how impressive do you think this is? And is this having a really big dominant player in the used car trade a good thing or a bad thing? Or, I kind of also see it as someone's actually showing that you can do used cars well and legitimately and take it beyond the rep that perhaps the industry sometimes has.
Well, careful on that comment, actually, because I think there's been people doing that really well for quite some time that might take a bit of offence at that, Richard.
I guess in the general public psyche, no matter what we do, we still sit down the bottom of the list. And yet you've got a brand like Turner's, which is, as far as trusted brand things go, and yet we've got a brand like Turner's that's sitting up the top.
I was thinking about this as you started your opening statement, and maybe you sort of led me to it. I don't know. And this is a little bit controversial, and Todd, don't head at me for saying this one, but I think there comes a point where you could almost be too big for the industry. And one of my fears, and I've had this said to me by a number of other wholesalers that I deal with and other dealers, it's almost at the point where they're a little bit too big and they've got such a dominant effect on the supply side of the industry. So one of the big issues that you face if you're a dealer, if you're not sourcing directly from Japan, is getting stock in New Zealand. And Turners have done really well, like full credit to them for hoovering up that supply through their arrangements with various lease channels, rental car companies, large fleets. But somebody that contacted me last week about a group of vehicles he had for sale from a fleet perspective, and the whole lot vanished into the Turners machine. And it makes the level of competition a little bit tougher again to actually source the stock that you want in what is, let's be honest, the New Zealand new market is a finite one because it's wholly reliant upon the number of vehicles sold 3, 5, 7 years ago. And if you've got such a dominant player that controls the pathway for those vehicles, it actually makes it harder to compete. When you bring everything else in-house as well, whether it's the finance and the insurance and everything. And if you're an AutoSure customer, for example, you're well aware that your brand is owned by a company that you directly compete with. All these other different channels, it starts to get to the point where you think, am I helping my competitor here to do me out of business? Am I doing myself any favors here? And I think Turners are going to be faced with that at some point in time. Whether too big is too big for the industry, or they're going to become such a dominant force they'll actually just start to ride and squash over a lot of the traditional industry. Amos, you see that sort of stuff down your way. What do you think? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think the growth has been, obviously they advertised really well with that Tina, like that advertising that they did, they pumped the TV, I think, and on the back of that, they just continued to grow, clearly. But I think your comments are just so interesting, and it's almost like the train me effect as well. If you look at the other side of where we advertise cars, so it's like, at what point do you make those decisions to bite the bullet and go with someone else in a whole lot of different aspects? So yes, it's such an interesting point you have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They kind of gave up the trade role to get here, didn't they? I mean, have they got much trade business left outside of perhaps DVA, Graham? They're kind of gone from that space, aren't they?
Well, I mean, if they do, they're not marketing it to the trade. I'm sure there are little pockets here and there. In Auckland, it's almost wholly retail sites, apart from the DBA operation, and we don't obviously you don't see that from a public perspective. But I was going to say, like every business, I think Turners have been very clever to pitch the Tina from Turners thing has been a great campaign. So the public perception of the business. Let's be honest, we also do hear from the trade perspective the not so good stories that get, washed out and filtered away you don't see. Not every experience at Turners is a good one. Not every staff member there is well trained. Not every buy price they give on a car is what I call fair market value for a trader. Not every transaction. So it's a great perception, but let's not imagine that it's a complete, Snow White castle either. But the perception of the brand amongst the public is exceptional, and it's a very hard thing to beat when you're talking about working in the retail sense.
Mm-hmm. What's the rep like in the position like in the finance side of the market? Because while we're sitting here lauding them for being wonderful sellers of used cars and the market presence they have there, of course a big chunk of that profit comes from their finance and insurance operations.
Mm. Yeah, and I do know that obviously they have a certain criteria, number of deals that they've got to hit from their dealerships and from their auction houses, etc. That obviously a certain amount go back through Oxford. That's pretty public, that sort of info. From ex-business managers and things like that from those departments. So I think they've just got such a big arm continuing to feed that as well, that Oxford book, that it then just multiplies. So when someone's on and when they have history with a certain company, even if the next time they buy privately or from a dealer, they're definitely having the opportunity of looking after that client and seeing them through the next stage. So then it lets them expand out of just that Turners thing because they cuddle their customer, So, it's feeding the beast. Yeah.
Mm. Now, not running off a story, Graham, we've seen a little bit of chat around the place, just going off a comment you made about, Trade Me being a similarly large operation in the market. Do you think there's a point where the market might get a little bit funny about the dominant position of Turners? I guess there's a lot more competition to Turners than there is to Trade Me, and of course Turners isn't necessarily, no one's beholden to Turners as such, are they?
No, and if you go back just maybe 15 years or so when they were a dominant player or supplier to the trade, that doesn't exist anymore. So no, I think as far as the industry is concerned, the concern is as much around Turners, so gobbling up supply, so having total control of supply of New Zealand new stock in the country, and then being too dominant a player in the retail perspective through the marketing. And again, it doesn't really matter whether they offer better deals or better cars. That's not the point. It's the perception that they do. And I'd argue and say a lot of the stuff that we put up here, for example, on our site, they're better cars and they're better prices, and we know our stock, we know where it's come from. And having done some blind shopping, not that we should, but we do. I mean, that should be our role in the business, is to make sure you know what your competitors are doing. I don't believe their experience in many cases is any better, in some cases worse, than what a lot of traditional dealers offer. But again, it's the public perception of that. And as a dealer, that's the most frustrating thing, because that's one thing you can't change. It's just like elections. Often it's so much around sentiment perception that has nothing to do with the reality of what the party, or in this case, the business offers. But the public see that as the trusted point, if you like, and irrespective of what the outcome's going to be, they'll shop there.
Mm. Do you ever get customers coming in and showing the minimum value band on the Turners website and waving that in front of you, saying that's what this car should be to sell?
Yes. Yep. And Aquas, it's funny, Aquas are a classic case in point, where we obviously specialise in Aquas. We've got a lot of them, all different versions of them. And we know, the difference between, well, you should, an Aqua L spec with the Uber back seat and the grey trim and the thin carpets, and say an Aqua G or an Aqua X Urban with all the nice bits and pieces and leather. But the algorithms that control those sort of values within Turners, for example, is a good question to ask. That's not drawn up and used as a comparison. So the customer says, here's the value for the Aqua I've got here at Turners. So yeah, that's an L spec. That's an L spec that 125,000 Ks in white. Mine is a G, leather, cruise control, TSN. Yeah, but it's an Aqua, Turners say. And so again, that perception, once you're explaining, you're losing.
Is the L spec the Ram Raid spec?
Yeah, it is. Funny you should say that.
I had someone come to me the other day saying they genuinely didn't want to buy an Aqua because they thought they could all be broken into easily, and that they were the Ram Raid car.
So top tip for your Aquas: the only ones that are the Ram Raid specials are the early Aquas with a key start, of which all the L's are a key start. But again, I'm sharing industry knowledge here. Most dealers may not realise this, that post 2017, so late 2017, they changed to a chip key. And so even though you may have the physical keys in your hand, there's still a transponder built into the key. So little Benji, Bob and Rangy that are trying to steal the Aqua before they go on a bit of a ciggy run, still can't start the car. So you've got your Ram Raid is actually getting a little bit more precise about it. It's not only going to be an Aqua with a key start, it's going to be a pre-2017 Aqua with a key start. You can do your research before you steal the car now.
Oh, classic. Right. Now, on to the next story, and this is another one. It's from our Australian website. It's a little story, but I think it's interesting to see that it's kind of affecting New Zealand and whether there will be any spin-off for the market from it. And that is that payments from the Takata airbag class action settlement have begun. So if you had customers out there that had a car with a Takata airbag in it, they, of course, would have had it fixed, and the new car industry in New Zealand has taken a lead in dealing with that, even for the used import stock. But now, if these customers went and signed up for a class action that was running in Australia, they're getting a check. Now, if you have some cars in your yard that you'd applied for, maybe you're getting a check too. I'm not entirely sure if anyone went to the extent of that. An administrator appointed by the Supreme Court of New South Wales has commenced payments to claimants in a $52 million settlement of the Takata airbag class action, which was approved in June 2022. Epic Systems says it received 24,482 valid claims from Australia and New Zealand, and payments of $846.55 began on October 5. Where more than one claimant lodged a registration in respect of the same vehicle as identified by its VIN, Epic Systems says the settlement will be split evenly between those claimants. So, an interesting one yet. Graham, do you know of any dealers that may have put their own application in for that class action on cars they had in stock at the time?
No, I don't actually. I wasn't even aware that we could join that class action. But it's funny, I had my first Takata recall notice, if you like, or a notification of part arrival on a vehicle in probably a year and a half. Just yesterday came in from Toyota advising that a vehicle that I traded, I think 6 months ago, that the parts and bits and pieces for that recall were to be completed. And it's an old Ractus, like it's a 2006, I think it is, Toyota Ractus. And so the system's obviously still chugging away and working. But I wasn't aware, honestly, that we could join that class action. And to what end? New Zealand had to my knowledge, there were no injuries or deaths and no injuries sustained that was shown to be through a faulty Takata airbag. It was only Australia that had an issue. Is that correct?
You tended to need more of a hot, humid climate, really to melt them down at all. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some smart dealer in the trade who had attached some things to vehicles they own. But interesting to see that. I think it's interesting. New Zealand. Well, I wouldn't say interesting. It's, I guess, probably a good thing that New Zealand go down the track of some brands in Australia, and that some brands over in Australia realised for some of the older cars, like that Ractus, that it was cheaper for them just to buy out the cars and send them to the scrap heap. I know basically Honda Australia wiped a generation of CRV off the road in Australia, and that would have been a whole different kettle of fish in New Zealand, considering the mix of used, import, and new stock. And be interesting. It will be fun to see what would happen to a financed car, Amos, if the distributor wanted to buy it back and put it off the road.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, the owner would be like, "That's my money."
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting one there, and be interesting to see if we saw more of that kind of stuff come through. Now, on to another sort of finance-related story, but just a nice little one. Mike Downs joins Avani Finance as NZ Automotive General Manager. Avani Finance Group has appointed Mike Down as its Automotive General Manager for the New Zealand market. Down joins Avani from Oryx New Zealand. He was previously John Andrew Ford and Mazda Fleet Services General Manager and Fleet Partners Relationship Management and Customer Services General Manager. He's also worked in banking and investments both in New Zealand and the UK. This is an exciting opportunity for me to join an already successful team. Avanti Finance has some ambitious plans, and I can't wait to help them come to fruition, Down says. Mike's depth of experience in the vehicle industry sees him as the right candidate to lead our team forward, says Avanti Chief Executive Mark Mountcastle. That story there has one of my little things that I love to see, and Amos, you're a prime example of it, is someone with actual dealership experience doing the business and dishing out the money. Does it make a difference to help having someone who actually understands what being a dealer is like on the business side of things?
100%, totally. Yeah. To be on a dealership and to know that, in certain circumstances, when you don't reply within a certain time, that opportunity of sale is gone. It's out the gate. Or how you deal with it, or what you ask for, how you ask for it is like critical. Absolutely critical. Yeah. So having dealership experience, I think, is awesome for any position that then deals back with dealers.
Yeah. Avanti's been an interesting one in the last since the COVID period. I mean, like many, they had some struggles in the past, but they seem to have really bounced back and been on a real strong charge over the last few years. They made some acquisitions. They, of course, are the owners, if I'm making sure I've got it right now, of Motor Central. Graham? Yep, that's right.
Yep.
So they're building quite a formidable little team there and a formidable suite of products. So it'll be interesting to see how they go from there. Now, another nice little staff one is we have a group of award-winning Mitsubishi Motors New Zealand dealership staff are heading to Japan. The lucky people. I would love to be heading to Japan right now. A technician, a service advisor, and a parts advisor from the Mitsubishi Motors New Zealand dealership network emerged victorious from the brand's biannual National Skills Contest, and will now head to Japan to compete for award title. The three national champions are McVeary Crawford, Mitsubishi technician Garrett Van Schwelkwick, hope I got that name right, McVeary Crawford service advisor Emma Funnell, and Simon Lucas Mitsubishi parts advisor Logan Pratt. They will be this is part of a global competition. It's open to all 59 dealerships, and the finals were held in at the company's HQ in Poirua, Wellington, which we were at recently, Graham, but I'm not sure if anyone's ever been to that dealership, that office as such. Sorry, I've lost the screen. Hold on a second there, guys. Sorry.
Well, while you're saying that, I was going to say, it occurs to me, Mitsubishi, they have the best parties, don't they? They're not the... we seem to see a lot of stories about Mitsubishi New Zealand working with their teams. They seem to have the best offshores to Japan or Australia or bits and pieces. I mean, if I was a service advisor or a tech or even one of their senior sales team, I'd want to work for Mitsubishi. They seem to do some really neat stuff and reward their staff well. They've figured out the formula for it, and they really look after their people. That's from an outsider's perspective. No, I don't work for Mitsubishi, but they seem to have a very, very good idea of what it takes to build a great team and keep that team highly engaged and motivated and happy.
And I think the day we were at Mitsubishi Motors New Zealand, they had like a Spanish food truck or something turn up.
They
had the music blaring and
the Fiesta wagon rolling up outside making tacos. It was Taco Tuesday on a Friday. It was great.
I think the cool thing is, and it's just a reminder to everyone, is that staff development and looking after your staff like that is so important. It's good for morale, good for obviously the experience they gain, you do a bit of company development within your group, Amos. I know you seem to hire 1 million people a week at the moment, but you are taking the time to take care of the ones you got.
Yeah, totally. No, it's absolutely on our. It's a regular one we do. Yeah, you just have to. It grows the culture exactly like, and obviously what Graham said, and it also brings an insight of people that otherwise you might not have been able to get in front of when you go through your interview process. That want to actually be part of it because they see what you're doing as well. As much as it's for your staff, it's also for your future staff too. Yeah. That's right. You've got to be an appealing employer. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw Amos while I was talking about that. He was Googling taco trucks in Christchurch.
Yeah.
Do love me some tacos. Right. Now, on to the last of the news. It's quiet week, election, all that kind of stuff. We'll talk, and this is, again, it's like the Turners thing. I'm pulling up the story as a starting point. It's not about the story itself. And that is that Volkswagen are doing an electric graduate trade-in for the electric vehicles. So basically, what their pitch is, you take any old blender or electrical appliance into a Volkswagen dealership, and you get $14,000 off an Volkswagen ID4 or ID5. Now, really, if you actually break it down, you take out the clean car, it's like a $7,000 discount, or at the same time as they kind of advertise at a price car. But we are interestingly seeing a massive round of discounts on electric vehicles at the moment. We have seen the Aura Good Cat's being cut dramatically. We've seen a few little cuts and promotions and enhancements here and there on the BYD range. We've seen, we had already seen Skoda do some discounting. LDV has done some big discounts on their Ute. I think their Ute's got a similar discount on it to that Volkswagen there. Who else? Lots of discounting going on. Now, we're hearing a lot of people saying, oh, no one wants electric vehicles, or blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure I'm necessarily reading at that. At that, I more see that these guys are just a little bit nervous about the clean car discount and perhaps trying to lower their stock levels before that goes away. You guys seeing any other similar things in the market around that? I mean, Graham, how's the used car side of EVs going?
Oh, gangbusters. If you've got EVs to sell, use EVs right now, you're in clover, because your market is well aware that the clean car rebate's going to go. And we talked about it last week. There's a finite volume of stock, I think, going to be on the ground that'll be here in time to take advantage of that. Assuming that we do have a January 1st cutoff that was promised prior to the election itself. But I was going to say, from a new perspective, I'm also hearing, and I know you're not going to like to hear this, Richard, that the news sector in certain areas is becoming a little bit squiffy in terms of shifting EVs. Now, I know you've got your suppose your favourite brands that you work with and you hear that are doing really well and putting stuff out. And Tesla, for example, so much of their stuff is forward order. But the dealers with stock on the ground, it's becoming a little bit troublesome. And
they're all struggling. Yeah,
it's a problem. Why? Well, we could sit here and speculate all day. Is it because people are concerned about the road user charges coming off next year? They can't be concerned about the clean car discount because they'd be buying one now if they were concerned about that. Are there other factors at play? Have we reached a point where the market is now mature enough that it doesn't need any further assistance from grants and other things, and people are now making a choice not based on incentivization, not based on necessarily the cost at the home to charge, but on just the mere vehicle it suits? We've reached that peak early uptake EV.
Yeah. I've got a few notes here from Anthony McLean, well known to our viewers. He's been on the show before and is a very prominent commentator on this kind of stuff. It's for a story, but I'll read out some of it now. He says, look, the market at the moment is soft in general, but BEV might actually buck the trend because of the threat of the removal or likelihood of removal of the rebate. So the interesting thing here is the actual share of BEVs in the market is actually up. So we're selling less, but it's actually more of the market. Local brands are finding their feet with EVs and are learning that there are limited consumers with $80,000 to spend on an EV. And if you're not under $80,000, then you are tiny volume, because a $5,000 price difference is really $13,000 if priced around the cap. So that's interesting. The cap still plays a role there. That cap is actually quite problematic. It's interesting. I was reading some other stats the other day that said that the average price of a new EV in New Zealand is $79,990. If you actually, which says the cap is clearly having some effect because so many models have been forced down under that. Tesla continues to disrupt the market. Pre-Tesla price cuts were almost unheard of. Brands would offer 0% financing or a service plan to increase sales or reduce inventory, but Tesla doesn't have a dealer network and they see price cuts as a more effective way of stimulating demand. They did price cuts on run-out Model 3 to $62,500, which compounded the other brand's misery because $62,500 was cheap for the specification offered, and the Model Y is cheaper than the 3 right now. So Tesla registered 697 Model Y last month. It was a big month for Model Y. Tesla seems to come and go based on which ship is in the harbour, basically. I will touch on one thing on that, Amos. Is it harder to do 0% finance for the new car guys at the moment? I mean, with the interest rates up, does that make a difference to how easily they can do those kind of promotions?
Yeah, because their buyouts are up, so it obviously makes the distributor obviously has to put in more money to obviously achieve those. Yeah, it's definitely funny. You see that swing, like, obviously we had on the back of COVID, obviously new cars really, really high all through that period, and obviously after. And then you could really see it about 12 months ago, or actually the start of this year, Q1 of this year, all the distributors starting to dive into that third, interest-free, 5% sort of deals, distributor-backed. And it's a clear correlation with exactly what you're both saying, and Graham, is like that stock holding and stuff of the distributors. Like, clearly they have stock and it needs to move. And that's, I think, was the noticeable thing on my side, was that big swing. They didn't do it for 3 years and then it's on. So, yeah.
So EMD, so we're talking European motor distributors, the Giltrap Group, so Skoda, Volkswagen, Cupra, Audi. EMD is fighting it with itself. Skoda learned that you need to be sub $70,000 to sell volume, and they delivered their first 43 this month. So now Volkswagen has repriced the ID4. So if anyone's wondering what he's talking about there, Skoda launched the Enyaq, was kind of the first MEB model car, so that's their platform to come into the market, and they priced it in the 80s and 90s. Fairly high spec model, well set up, I think, nice car. Volkswagen then came in and announced that the ID4 was going to be $79,990. So same car, Volkswagen badging. Volkswagen went for a sparser spec to get it under that price. Skoda realised they need to be under that price, so they dropped their price to that. So now customers had the option of going for a sparsely spec'd ID4 for $79,990 or a highly spec Skoda for $79,990. And of course, that's kind of sent people one way or the other. Volkswagen has a lot of cars on the ground, so they've had to drop that price. Essentially, it's $6,000, $6,000 discount to get that car out the door, which of course I guess confuses people about the other stuff. And then Audi's jumped in with an all-wheel drive, really highly spec one in the 90s as well. So that's kind of I feel sorry for Cupra in New Zealand, who was selling the hatchback version of the car, and they were priced at $78,990. So that was another spin in the mix. Interestingly, they've had to discount those because the first shipment was supposed to be 5-seaters, but they landed as 4-seaters. A little bit of industry nerd there for you. Oops. And they didn't discover it until the cars arrived at the dealerships.
So there's a couple of points on this, just very briefly. And one is, I think you've just highlighted one of the issues that consumers face is consumer confusion. If it took you 5 minutes to explain your way through the difference across, for example, the VAG group when it came to the products available on the same sort of platform, how the hell is
four brands coming out of the same office? Yeah.
And I think there's probably a little bit of that where people just genuinely now, unless you are a proper EV nerd, there's confusion about what and how. That sort of took the whole model upside down. And for the average person, it's actually a really complex maze to navigate your way through. But you know what I really want? My wish for 2024 when it comes to the EV sector, and this is not an EV sentiment, is get rid of all the subsidies. I don't like clean car standard. I don't like clean car discount. Not because I'm having a crack at ICE vehicles versus EV, but I want a level playing field. And I also think EVs are big enough now to get out of their training wheels and potty pants, stand on their own 2 feet, and let consumers buy them like a regular motor vehicle. No confusion over discounts, no confusion over rebates, no confusion over volume apportionment across different countries. Just let people buy them, and they'll stand on their own 2 feet, whether it's sooner or later, because people want to buy them, not because of the confusion of sentiment around road user or subsidies. Just level the playing field. We're now big enough.
I agree and disagree. I think I'm actually for subsidies, but I think that the way that the clean car discount and the clean car standard have been implemented has been pretty darn atrocious. It's been the good in concept, but bad policy, if that makes sense. I believe that there should be some form of assistance or subsidy, if for no other reason that there is a societal negative to us to continuing to put higher emitting vehicles on the road. And whether you want to hide away from the fact that no climate change, fine, whatever, don't care. There's proven statistics that high levels of particularly diesel particulate emissions, even with modern level emissions vehicles in our cities, it kills people. sorry if people disagree with it, there is proven statistics on that. It kills people. And if we can shift vehicles to something that doesn't kill people, then even if just subtly, even just with a little bit of a nod, even if it is just national committing to assist in the charging network rollout, so even if it's anything, I think that's a fair expectation. I'm not suggesting that diesel utes are bad. They're not. They are a big part of how we build our country, and same with vans and SUVs and so on and so forth. But the old argument goes that sometimes you have to actually pay for the pleasure of being able to do some of the things you want to do, and that's one of those cases. Now, do fuel taxes play a role in that? You end up paying more fuel taxes. Yes, but we're also going to start charging road user charges to electric vehicles. So that somewhat balances out saying, well, these people have to pay more fuel taxes for doing that. I think it's an interesting one from that perspective, that I don't think we should entirely say no to subsidies or assistance, but it's got to be done right. It's got to be done right. This one has been the CCD and the CCS were not put in place well, in my opinion. Yeah. The last comment from Anthony was, at the cheaper end, you need a point of difference. Rumor has it, don't print. Okay, I won't say that then.
Don't print that.
You can't be just another $49,990 product. You have to be better value or better spec, especially for a new brand. Aura was the weakest cheap EV in the market and therefore didn't sell. They delivered 10 last month when BYD delivered 107 Dolphin and 136 Atto 3, and MG 250 MG4 and 85 ZSEV. So now they have dropped the price very close to where it should have been all along. It's a great product, but it was priced wrong. Aura was pitched to the dealers as a cheap EV, but then it became a $50,000 EV. There is a difference between cheap and $50,000. And I think that's a good lesson for everyone, for used car salesmen, for people selling finance. You got to price it right. Yep, just the simple things. Right, so that's kind of that discussion around that. Now, something a little different to normal before we finish this up, in that we have a magazine ready to go, albeit I'm not sure if we've got the latest copy here. And we are going to be sending this out today. So if you want to catch up with the magazine, it's coming out in email today. Obviously, everyone who's watching this has signed up, but if not, go to autotalk.co.nz, hit the subscribe button, have a look through. Now, I am going to pop this up on screen. Hope this works. Whoa. Yeah, there we go. So that's our cover this week. We are chatting to Greg Epps, the new CEO of VIA. Really interesting chat with him. Interesting to see the way he's approaching VIA. More, I think, from his background in regards to systems and regulation and structure, all those kind of things. Graham, do you think VIA perhaps needs some systems and regulation and structure?
I think Greg has a really challenging role ahead, and that's nothing against VIA in saying that, but just in terms of the relevance of VIA and what it really wants for the industry going forward. Forget all the other nice to have bits and pieces, is what is good for VIA. What is good for the members of VIA?
I talk about the election in my column. We talk about Turners, as we just done there. We discuss Optimus buying out that big franchise group in Australia. They tell us they have no plans to go into the new car market in New Zealand. We'll see how long that lasts. Our wonderful sponsors, of course, there, including a certain company we have on the screen today. There's our story with that. We discuss Pentana Live, a great event that's coming up next week. We have a very brief, because he's being very coy, interview with Eugene Williams on his exit from Too Cheap Cars. He pulls out the interesting adage that in regards to business, if you want a friend, buy a dog. And I think he can reference which relationship he's referring to there. And again, there's some fantastic advertising there from a great partner of ours. Bit more coverage around that. I promise it'll die a little bit soon. It won't. We look at the Giltrap Supercar Show, raised $200,000 for charity, as we mentioned before. We look at the Mitsubishi dealers heading overseas, run through some people and places. We sent our journalist Nigel down to the the ITS New Zealand conference in Wellington. So a whole pile of cool things about transport technology there. Great discussion there. Talk about AI, which everyone has to. We have a great finance feature. So we discuss the year of the Financial Services Federation, credit care insurance, new vehicle loan financing, and a few other things there. MTA talks about apprenticeships. We have our usual columns, always great to have. We're still missing one from a certain someone on the screen, but we'll replace them one day. So a lot of stuff through there. Where are we going through? We talked to Muster Recruit, who are doing a lot of recruitment in the industry, including for some fairly big brands at the moment. And then we go through our usual statistics. You can see what the market's doing. And we look at a case from the Disputes Tribunal from a good old friend of ours, Graham, Mr. Andrew Casson. He's never disappeared.
It's another name that just seems to be never 2 or 3 folders short of the top of the stack.
Yes. Who apparently seems to have an awful lot of CO2 credits. I don't know why. Maybe I'm looking into why he has an awful lot of CO2 credits. I couldn't possibly comment yet.
Isn't that the modern version of the guy holding the dirty raincoat out in the corner saying, "Want to buy an EV credit?" Cheap, mate.
Yes. A trader with a colourful history whose current dealership's main bread and butter is importing damaged Land Cruisers from Australia, jumping around in dealer circles wanting to sell credits to everyone. Yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
we've said before, Richard, this is nothing if not an industry full of entrepreneurs.
Yes. Right. Well, any interesting plans for the weekend other than the election? Graham, you're going to a 21st. Amos, you're going to vote.
I'll do a little bit of work on Sunday in the office, on the phones, and hang out with kids.
Yep. Not going to go hang out at your motorbike dealership. How's that going?
It's been good. Yeah, it has been good. So, and obviously just you come into the good weather, it just makes the foot traffic, it's 7 days. So, Saturday, Sunday, it's been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously been a change as well with Christchurch, with another CMG taking BMW and Suzuki. So I think it's good. It's good for bikes.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming down to visit the Better offices next week, so maybe we should do a little bit of a walk around tour. You can show everyone around at the same time.
Yeah, totally.
No worries. Cool. Look, thanks everyone for watching. We've actually had a few people in the YouTube and Facebook I can see today following along. And we look forward to catching you guys next week for another AutoTalk Weekly Wrap.
Have a great